There's a moment in this video that everyone has seen, but nobody has analyzed. Alex Jangu is running down the slope of Mount Dukono. Behind him, the ash column is already visible, 10 kilometers of volcanic material punching into the sky. He is breathing hard. His German clients are behind him. The mountain is making the supersonic sound he will describe later to journalists. And he is filming. Not because he is a content creator, not because he wants the footage for Instagram. He is filming because he is speaking. He is saying, "I hope they are still alive." Newsweek. He is speaking about the two groups of tourists he saw at the crater rim when he was 100 meters below them, the groups who were still there when the eruption began, the groups who, in that moment, he believed were all dead. He hoped they were alive. He filmed himself hoping. He ran while he hoped. 3 of them were not alive. And here is the question that footage forces. The question that is more important than the death toll, more important than the criminal charges, more important than the closed mountain that 20 people climbed anyway. What did Alex Jangu know that the people at the crater rim did not know? Not what he saw with his drone on Thursday afternoon, though he saw it. Not what the warning signs said at the trailhead, though he read them. What did 21 years of climbing this specific mountain teach him about the specific moment when a volcano that has been erupting 3 times a day suddenly goes quiet, that nobody who discovered Mount Dukono on social media could have learned in any amount of time they spent on the internet? That question is the story of why 3 people are dead, and their bodies are still on the mountain. And it begins not on Friday morning, but on a Thursday afternoon with a drone and a silent crater. Stay with me, because this script is not about the eruption, not about the bodies on the mountain, not about the criminal charges facing the guide and the porter who are in a police station in North Halmahera right now. This script is about a specific piece of knowledge, a piece of volcanic literacy that saved 2 German lives on Friday morning, that exists nowhere on the internet, that cannot be found on the website of Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation, that is not in the warning sign at the trailhead, that is not in the social media appeals that the police chief said the hikers ignored. It is inside a 48-year-old Indonesian mountain guide named Alex Jangu, who has been climbing Mount Dukono long enough to know what its silence sounds like. And it is the specific knowledge that 3 people at the crater rim on Friday morning did not have. That gap between what he knew and what they did not is not a gap between a professional and amateurs. It is a gap between 21 years on one specific mountain and a social media algorithm that never once told its users, when this volcano goes quiet, run. First, the science. Because the mechanism that Jangu understood intuitively is real, documented, and has a specific volcanological explanation that no coverage of this disaster has provided. Mount Dukono has erupted close to 200 times since March. That is more than 3 eruptions per day on average. YouTube? A volcano that erupts, that frequently is operating what volcanologists call an open conduit system. The magma and volcanic gas rising from beneath the mountain are finding regular exits. The pressure that builds in the system is regularly released, in small puffs, in minor ash columns, in the continuous low-level activity that makes a volcano look active but manageable. That continuous release keeps the pressure from accumulating to dangerous levels. The system breathes in, out, 3 times a day, every day, for 60 days. And then it stops breathing. When an open conduit system suddenly becomes sealed, when falling debris or cooling lava plugs the vent, or when the volume of volcanic material rising exceeds the capacity of the exit and backs up into the crater, the pressure that was being released regularly has nowhere to go. It keeps building, behind a cap, in a sealed system. Jangu said it in the video. When Mount Dukono does not erupt for several days, people need to be careful because it may be building up very high pressure. And that is what happened today. Newsweek. He described the exact mechanism, not in technical language, in the language of someone who has watched this mountain breathe for 21 years and recognized the moment it stopped. He flew his drone on Thursday afternoon. The observations showed the crater was filled with volcanic material, which was not normal. Then they heard 2 explosions. Newsweek. The crater filling with volcanic material was the visual confirmation of what the silence had already told him. The conduit was backing up. The system was sealing. The pressure was building. 2 explosions on Thursday afternoon were the sealed system trying to find a way out, and failing. He knew on Thursday evening that Friday was going to produce the release. The people at the crater rim on Friday morning were standing on top of a sealed pressure system that a guide 100 meters below them had already diagnosed with a drone the previous afternoon. They did not know this. There was no mechanism through which they could have known it. Here is what 21 years on one specific mountain teaches you that no amount of internet research can replicate. It teaches you the baseline, not the average, the baseline. The specific sounds this mountain makes when it is breathing normally. The specific color of the steam when the hydrothermal system is in its regular state. the specific rhythm of its minor eruptions, the interval between them, the character of the sound, the texture of the ash column. Django told AFP, "This was the first time I'd seen it so quiet." YouTube, the first time. In however many climbs he had made in 21 years. The silence on Thursday was not just absence of eruption. It was absence of the baseline that he had been calibrating every time he climbed this mountain. It was abnormal quiet. The specific quality of silence that exists when a system that should be moving has stopped. That is not a reading you can take from the PVM-BG bulletin. The bulletin tells you, exclusion zone active, volcano at level 2 of 4, stay 4 kilometers from the crater. It does not tell you, this mountain has been erupting 3 times a day for 60 days, and yesterday it was silent, which means the pressure is building behind a seal, which means tomorrow is dangerous. The bulletin is correct. It is just not the same thing as what Django knew. He said they heard sounds coming from below the crater at around 3 p.m. local time Thursday. He then flew the drone to inspect the crater conditions from the air. Newsweek, sounds from below the crater, Thursday afternoon. Not the normal surface sounds of a venting volcano. Sounds from below, deep, pressurized. The specific acoustic signature of a system that has sealed at the surface and is communicating through the rock below it. He heard that. He flew the drone. He saw the filled crater. He told his clients. He had been to this mountain enough times to recognize the sound, the sight, and the sequence. Here's the detail that should stop you cold. The drone that Alex Django flew on Thursday afternoon, the consumer drone that he used to inspect the crater and see the volcanic material filling the basin, is not a scientific instrument. It is not a government monitoring tool. It is not part of the PVM-BG's data collection infrastructure. It is a civilian quadcopter that a private individual flew over an active volcanic crater because he was worried about what the silence meant. The PVM-BG has been issuing exclusion zones for Mount Dukono since December 2025. The volcano has been erupting close to 200 times since March. The formal hiking closure was issued on April 17th. And the most specific, most actionable piece of precursor information gathered at Mount Dukono in the 18 hours before the eruption was not gathered by the PVM-BG. It was not gathered by Basarnas. It was not gathered by the North Halmahera police. It was gathered by a 48-year-old mountain guide with a consumer drone who was worried because the mountain was too quiet. Django said directly, "At Dukono, there is no security post controlling entry or exit routes, and of course there are no forest police preventing people from climbing." Newsweek, no security post, no forest police, no ranger at the trailhead who would have had access to the same observation that Django made, the filled crater, the subsurface sounds, the unusual silence, and could have communicated it to the 18 other hikers on the mountain on Thursday night. The state's monitoring apparatus was watching the mountain from instruments and satellites. It had been issuing warnings for 5 months. It had put a sign at the trailhead. The best information available about Mount Dukono's specific condition on Thursday, May 7th, 2026, was inside a consumer drone and the mind of the man flying it. And it was not shared with anyone except 2 German tourists in a mountain camp on Thursday evening. Now, the specific human picture that Django saw from 100 meters below. When the major eruption occurred at 7:41 a.m., it seemed the group had just arrived at the summit and were enjoying themselves. Newsweek, just arrived, and enjoying themselves. They had climbed through the night or the early morning hours. The timing indicates an overnight climb or a very early departure. The standard approach for summit photography, designed to arrive at first light when the sky is dramatic and the views are clear. One group of 9 people already close to the rim, and the other were videoing for content. Newsweek videoing. At the rim of a volcano that Django had determined the evening before was sealing its conduit and building pressure. The phones were out. The cameras were rolling. The content was being captured. The dramatic sunrise, the crater below, the volcanic landscape that does not exist in Singapore, that does not exist in any of the office buildings and apartment towers and shopping centers of a city-state built on flat, reclaimed land beside a calm strait. Mount Dukono was the opposite of all of that. It was remote. It was raw. It was closed, which made it more attractive, not less, to a specific kind of person who values what other people have not seen. North Halmahera, Police Chief Erlikson Pasaribu said, "Local residents understand and don't want to climb. Many hikers are foreign tourists who wish to create social media content." Daily Dispatch. Local residents understand. They have watched this mountain their entire lives. They know what the silence means. Not because they have flown drones over the crater, because they have grown up in its shadow and absorbed, through proximity and culture and community memory, the same baseline knowledge that Django has formalized through 21 years of professional guiding. The tourists who wished to create content had no access to that baseline knowledge. The platform that showed them Mount Dukono as a destination did not carry it. The guide or guides who led them up the trail past the warning sign either did not have it or did not share it in a way that changed their behavior. 3 of them are dead. Here's what is not making headlines. The 2 German tourists who were with Jang-gu on Friday morning, the ones who are alive because he told them Thursday evening that a major eruption was coming, have not been named in any report. Their identities are not public, their experience of what happened has not been told, but their story is the specific data point that validates everything Jang-gu knew. He told them Thursday night, "This mountain is accumulating pressure, a major eruption is coming, we need to be careful." He showed them the drone footage, he described the filled crater, he told them to stay in the safe radius. They were 2 people from a country where volcanoes do not exist, Germany. A country of mountains, the Alps, the Black Forest, the Rhine Valley, but not volcanoes. Not erupting, crater-filling supersonic sound volcanoes in North Maluku. They had no more baseline knowledge of Mount Dukono than any of the Singaporeans who were at the crater rim on Friday morning. They were tourists, like the others, visitors like the others, people who had come to Halmahera Island to see something that their own country does not offer. The difference is that they had a guide who flew a drone, and when that guide told them on Thursday night that Friday was going to be serious, they believed him. Jang-gu said his clients survived because they were in the safe radius. YouTube, the safe radius. They were there because Jang-gu put them there, because he knew where it was, because he had spent 21 years figuring out where it was on this specific mountain. The tourists at the crater rim had guides too, guides who led them up the trail past the warning sign inside the exclusion zone to within meters of a crater that was filled with volcanic material on Thursday afternoon. Different guides, different knowledge, different outcomes. Here is the final piece of context that transforms this from a disaster story into a pattern story. Since March, Mount Dukono has erupted close to 200 times. YouTube, 200 eruptions in 60 days, every one of them photographed, filmed, uploaded. Every one of them adding to the visual archive of Mount Dukono as a dramatic, active, photogenic volcano. Every one of them building the social media case for why a trip to Halmahera Island to stand at the crater rim of an erupting volcano is a worthwhile experience for someone who values raw, authentic, extreme travel. The 200 eruptions made Mount Dukono famous in adventure tourism circles. The 200 eruptions made it look manageable. You go, you watch it erupt, you film it, you leave. The eruptions are small, the ash columns are visible but not dangerous from a distance. The mountain performs on schedule. The 201st eruption was different, not because the mountain changed its character, but because its character was already building to this. Because an open conduit system that erupts 200 times in 60 days and then suddenly goes quiet is not resting. It is sealing, it is pressurizing, it is doing exactly what Jang-gu described from 21 years of watching it. The 200 eruptions were the advertisement. The silence was the warning. The 201st eruption was the bill. Jang-gu said the May 8th eruption was the biggest he had ever witnessed on Mount Dukono. Newsweek, the biggest in 21 years. The eruption that ended a 60-day sequence of manageable activity. The eruption that killed 3 people who had come to film one of the 200 small ones and found the 201st instead. And the guide who knew the 201st was coming, who flew the drone, who heard the subsurface sounds, who recognized the silence as pressure rather than rest, was 100 meters below the crater rim when it happened, running, hoping, filming. So ask yourself 3 questions. Jang-gu's observation on Thursday afternoon, crater filled with volcanic material, subsurface sounds, unusual silence after 200 eruptions in 60 days, was the most actionable precursor information available from Mount Dukono in the 18 hours before the eruption. He gathered it with a consumer drone. He shared it with 2 German clients who survived. He did not share it with Indonesian authorities. He was not required to. There is no security post, no forest police, no reporting mechanism through which a private guide's precursor observation becomes available to other groups on the mountain. If there had been a mandatory guide reporting system, a simple mechanism through which a guide's observation of unusual volcanic conditions triggers a communication to other groups currently on the mountain, would the 2 groups at the crater rim on Friday morning have known what Jang-gu knew on Thursday night? And if they had known, would they have been at the rim? Newsweek, Mount Dukono has erupted close to 200 times since March. Each of those eruptions was photographed and shared. The visual record of 200 eruptions built the social media case for why this is a destination worth visiting. The same platforms that hosted footage of 200 small eruptions did not host footage of a guide flying a drone over a filled crater and hearing subsurface explosions on Thursday afternoon. The warning information that existed, the PVMBG bulletin, the closure letter, the warning signs, the social media appeals, was distributed on the same channels as the promotional content, but reached a different audience. The tourists who climbed on Friday morning found Mount Dukono through content. They trusted content. They came to create content. Who is responsible for ensuring that the content ecosystem that promotes active Indonesian volcanoes to international adventure tourists also carries, at equal prominence, the specific safety information that the difference between a manageable eruption and a deadly one depends on? YouTube. And if Alex Jang-gu, 48 years old, 21 years on this mountain, consumer drone, Thursday afternoon observation, produced better precursor intelligence about Mount Dukono's Friday morning eruption than the entire official monitoring and communication apparatus of Indonesia's PVMBG, Basarnas, North Halmahera Police, and Tourism Ministry. Combined, what does that tell us about the gap between institutional volcanic monitoring and the ground-level knowledge that lives in individual guides, local residents, and long-term mountain professionals in Indonesia's most remote volcanic regions? And what would it take to build a system that captures that knowledge, shares it in real time, and gets it to the tourists who need it before they walk past the warning sign? Right now, as you read this, the mountain is still erupting. The bodies of the 3 deceased remain on Mount Dukono. Due to ongoing eruptions, the situation is still considered unsafe for evacuation. Search operations resume Saturday. David Shub Alex Jangu is at his hotel near the volcano. He has given interviews to CNN, AFP, and ITV. He has described the drone flight. He has described the filled crater. He has described the subsurface sounds on Thursday afternoon. He has described the silence of a mountain that had been erupting 3 times a day for 60 days. This was the first time I'd seen it so quiet. I told the guests that a major eruption is going to happen because the volcano is accumulating pressure at the bottom of the crater. And my prediction turned out to be correct. YouTube. His prediction was correct. His 2 German clients are alive. He is alive. And the knowledge that saved 3 lives on Friday morning, the 21-year education in this specific mountain's specific behavior, is not written down anywhere. It is not in the PVMBG bulletin. It is not in the warning sign at the trailhead. It is not in the travel blog that sent 9 Singaporeans to Halmahera Island. It is not in the Instagram post that first made this crater famous. It is inside the man who flew the drone, who heard the silence, who recognized the pressure building inside it, who told 2 people to stay in the safe radius on Thursday night, and who stood 100 meters below the crater rim on Friday morning, running, filming, saying out loud the only thing he did not know: I hope they are still alive. Newsweek. 3 of them were not. The mountain confirmed his prediction. The content they were creating is still there, on phones inside an exclusion zone, on a slope that rescue teams will reach when the eruption pauses. The knowledge that would have saved them existed 100 meters below them, in a man with a drone and 21 years. On a mountain that nobody who discovered it on social media had ever seen be quiet, until Thursday.